Welcome everybody. This is Hugh Massie, the CEO and founder of DNA Behaviour. And today I'm delighted to be doing another one of our Identity EQ interviews. In a way, I'd rather sort of say it's a conversation. And I'm delighted today to have with me Robyn Clay, who is a director and chief relationship officer with Linktank, which is a technology integration business working in the financial services industry in Cape Town, South Africa. It's a business that operates all over South Africa. And I had the great fortune to meet Robyn a couple of years ago when I visited the great city of Cape Town. I loved it, can't wait to get back. So Robyn, welcome to this conversation. And I'd just like to ask you maybe the first question around, if you could just share a little bit about your background story and how you've got to working in Linktank.
Okay, great. Hi, Hugh. So lovely to see you again. And I'm also very much looking forward to this conversation. So the background around me is I've had grown up in South Africa in Cape Town, and actually studied English and I wanted to join the diplomatic corps. So I'm a political science English major for some reason, ending up in the financial services industry, most likely because you're a graduate and that's where the most lucrative jobs lie in South Africa, at least. I've been in financial services my entire career in various roles that span public relations, communications, marketing, legal departments, administration, all of that. But technically feeling like I came into my own when I started working with technology inside financial services, and not so much because of the technology itself, but because I found it extremely interesting to see how people respond to technology. And then when you unpack that for them, you start to get a better sense of how they respond to just about anything, whether it be financial services and technology. So there's something that gives me huge satisfaction to see how I can make it more accessible to people, especially given that I'm somebody that I often feel is quite ordinary within any business. So I'm somebody who I feel represents the ordinary folk who actually don't understand the technology and don't understand the financial services. And so you can become an interpreter in many ways for them. I worked at Old Mutual and Old Mutual Wealth and Access Financial Planning for many years. And it was in those businesses where I was, for the first time, really introduced to financial institutions that had a client's best interest at heart and wanted to help financial advisors make the relationship with their clients better. And I started to see financial services as an incredible tool for empowerment within people's lives, really. And then the technology aspect of that just accelerates that capability for human beings, essentially. I helped implement technology inside Old Mutual Wealth for a while, for about 4 years, before meeting up with Jen and Nina, who are my partners now in Linktank, and really met up with them because I was struggling with trying to interpret how a software provider and how technology is implemented to human beings inside a business. Software providers, we were both finding, speak a technical language and a business speaks the business language, and there's nothing in between that's interpreting that process. And I found that with Jen and Nina, and I'd never come across it before. We worked so well together that when I felt like I was getting to an end of my time at Old Mutual Wealth, they offered me the opportunity to come and build that business with them, which was extremely exciting. And I've been with Linktank now for about 6 years almost, and it's amazing how things have changed since we began on this journey. And now we're going into a new phase, which is even more exciting. But that's the entrepreneurial journey, is just constant change throughout the time I've been with Linktank.
Yeah, Linktank's really in a very interesting position, isn't it, as the wedge between the technology and the financial services firm. And a lot of the way I heard what you just said, Robyn, which was very interesting, is really how do you make the technology relatable? ultimately to the end user. It's also got to be relatable to the advisors. Using the technology in Old Mutual, there's thousands of advisors. It's a huge firm, and making it not the technology not scary for them to use, and then they've got to be comfortable for their clients to use it or to participate in it in some way. And it's quite a challenge. It's a lot of also is change management, isn't it?
Absolutely, because it's hard. You're working your job, and all of a sudden you now have this new technology aspect to your role that you've got to learn, and you've got to unlearn a whole bunch of stuff to be able to use it properly. And it's scary and it's time consuming, and it requires some attention and engagement from your side. So unless you can really, really show that something adds value and will over time, maybe not to begin with, but over time will make your life easier, it's impossible to try and implement technology or force people to use technology. They've got to be able to see that it's going to make their lives easier for them.
So really, in a lot of ways, what you're doing is helping the technology firm build a relationship with the financial services firm, in terms of the technology adoption. Because if there's not a relationship there, if there's not a human aspect brought into it, the user adoption isn't going to happen.
And if they don't want to, or they don't have personality types that are inclined to do that, that doesn't matter, because we can do that. So, and that's the role we can play for a lot of software providers, is just playing that role for them so that they don't need to build those skills in their business if that's not what they enjoy or what they're inclined to do.
So that's interesting. So when you're working with a financial services firm, you just mentioned it's finding the right personalities for adoption, or helping the different personalities for adoption. So how have you been doing that? Just tell me a little bit more about how you've been making technology relatable inside these firms that have to use it.
So up until now, it's been a manual, long-term conversational process. So lots of conversations, lots of time spent inside a business, lots of surveys and questionnaires to unpack what people are thinking around business requirements and what each person needs from technology. And that's been a very long-term, expensive exercise for a financial advisor. But it takes a lot of effort. It can be to really understand what a business needs in terms of technology, and then matching that right technology to them requires conversation and unpacking and workshops and things like that. And that's an expensive process because we consult, and so our consulting hours cost advisors money. So we are constant. I mean, what we've done with Hardydar now is just one tool we've introduced to try and take that process and somehow automate it using technology so that more advisors can engage with it more easily. And I guess that's where Money EQ also is going to play a role in our business, not only in our business, but hopefully in the business of financial advisors in South Africa, because it can accelerate that relationship building, or finding those insights, unpacking those insights, right? Yeah,
so part of your work, and there's a few things there to unpack, I think. The part of your work, though, with the conversations, really, you've been facilitating the conversation. So, and as your DNA behavior style is a facilitator. As a leader, you're a facilitator. So, in a way, what it seems like is you've been using your facilitation gifts to lead these workshops over time. As you said, it's been a manual process to unpack what people really want, because just receiving a questionnaire and ticking the box and rating things 1 to 9 or 1 to 5 or I strongly believe or whatever doesn't always really get what the feelings are around it, and what people are wanting to deploy or what they feel they could deploy.
Absolutely, it does. I mean, regardless of whatever you're doing from a technology point, nothing takes away that you've got something to work with, you've got a framework to work with, and you've got some high level insights into what technology is required, but it does take some more conversation to really get to the bottom of things, and sometimes things are confusing until you've had that conversation.
So in a way, it's making people, it's a way of making people feel heard in that conversation if they're going to have to adopt something new, or there's a plan to adopt something new. But there's probably also a little bit of influence in there to shape their minds and not be negative. And manage expectations.
And to try and get everybody's point of view across, because there are various roles inside of business, right? So, and I guess that's where a facilitation type role is so necessary, because businesses can make a lot of bad decisions when only one person is making those decisions on behalf of many people who have different needs. So to try and get everybody's needs covered, at least heard, and where it's not possible to meet them, to help them understand why, is really important. And in terms of getting people to adopt technology, that's really important.
So it's not, if you take a large firm like Old Mutual, and I know who they are because I've been to their office. I mean, it's huge. It's definitely a conglomerate in its own right, but it's not just the 50,000 advisors and agents that work there that are dealing with clients all over South Africa, but it's also all the stakeholders inside the business whose lives and careers are on the line to some degree in making the decision. And in a lot of ways, you've got to bring all of them along on this journey as well, plus enough of the end user advisors that are going to deploy this with customers, and then there's getting client and customer feedback.
Yes, and then there's looking at the technology and what is a realistic expectation around what that technology can do, and trying to manage that, because it isn't the silver bullet and it isn't going to fix everything. So helping that transition phase happen. So on behalf of the technology provider, to help them be best positioned or best represented to users, so that it's a realistic expectation that users have of them. Otherwise, there's unhappiness afterwards when you're getting something that you had higher expectations of than is possible.
So it's the communication around the technology in a way to get it sold and adopted in-house, but also it's how the technology ultimately gets set up inside the organization so it can be easily used. How does it show up on a screen? The user manuals to ensure people understand how to use it. Hopefully they don't have to be too long. But it's all of those pieces. Is sort of the UX experience, the digital experience of using it in now. I mean, and all these things have progressed, are very important. And when you're a technology firm, and I suppose in a way DNA behavior is, it's easy to see it through your own lens, but to see it in the financial services firm's lens and what they've got to deal with is a whole nother matter.
Hugh, you make a very good point, because we do a lot of surveys and we do a lot of feedback to both technology providers and to financial institutions around what is good technology, what's bad technology, and what we're finding really interesting now is we're being asked questions around which technology providers are the nicest ones, which ones work, which relationships work best. And that's been a very interesting outcome, and it's really recent. So people are going, so tell me, when you're working with a technology provider, how does it feel? And do they listen to you? And what's the experience like? So people are asking questions that go beyond just the technology. They're asking about how it makes them feel and how that relationship works. Because I guess, as we all are maturing in our careers, or as we're getting used to technology, we're understanding that there is still a human element to anything. That's one of the big questions we often get asked about AI and roboticizing systems. And it doesn't really matter how well that works. if it does work well, what tends to happen is human beings start to talk about how it feels, and they ask those questions of us. So sometimes we're asked how, when we're giving feedback on what it's going to be like to work with a technology provider, tell me how they work. Are they collaborative? Will they listen to me? And those become factors in the decisions that those financial institutions are going to make around the technology that they select at the end of the day, which is an interesting development, an interesting recent development.
Well, feelings are important. They're important at every level. And what we're seeing now in financial services so much is, you used the term at the start today, Robyn, client-centered. We've got to understand feelings of the customers, but you've also got to understand the feelings of the advisors and the stakeholders. If you're a technology supplier, but feelings all the way through the whole process have to be understood, and sitting there with the numbers side of it, and what gets produced. In a way, it's almost assumed that the software is going to work. It's, as you say, it's the feelings, and what everybody is looking for these days, and we've been seeing it, is customization.
Absolutely.
Because how a piece of software might work in Old Mutual might be different at Sanlam Bank or another group, because that organisation's different, and guess what? There's some different feelings inside there too. And importantly, a different experience it might be trying to provide its client base. But in a way, the same information is required. It just got to come across different.
Customizations. I wanted to work the way I wanted to work, but I also wanted to be flexible enough to work the way my colleague, who has a different requirement, would like it to work. So, and that's really where a whole integration conversation, which is, the conversation definitely in the South African industry at the moment, because it's such a gap. You can't create technology solutions that are going to be customizable and flexible enough to suit everybody.
No.
So you have to have an integrated type of solution to enable that, so that you can meet the needs of as many people as you can. Especially if you're a large institution and you have so many stakeholders.
But maybe not all of the technology features can be customized, but the communication of the experience of it can be customized. So that,
Absolutely.
If you're going into Old Mutual and they've got thousands of advisors and different stakeholders, knowing that each person's got a different communication and learning style, they might all be, at the end of the day, using the same technology, but you can customize the experience up for them to some degree, so that the people that need more information, they get the software delivered to them a certain way. There's a way that they can deliver the experience to their clients. People that are more outgoing and friendly, want the touch points presented in a softer way, compared to a goal-driven person. And I think that if understanding the behaviour of the client, not just the individual investor out there, but the advisor and the stakeholders, can really help this experience to get it implemented.
Absolutely. It certainly will help us. Hugh, as I was saying at the beginning of our conversation, we are really at the beginning of our journey with DNA and Money EQ. So we're still learning. It's a really exciting time for us, because we originally started to engage with this software because we were seeing it as a tool that advisors could use to manage their clients. Interestingly enough, what's become evident to me is it's a tool we're going to use inside our business so that we can help our clients better. So, I had my first conversation, it actually just came up in a conversation after my interview with Carol. That became very evident to me, how you can use this tool to get to know things about your client that actually don't even come up in conversation. So these are insights that you're not always going to get because you're having a work conversation with somebody on a specific topic, right? So we do have an intention now to roll it out to all of our key clients and our key contact points and clients, so that we're making sure what we're doing is working with them in a way that meets their style, and that they know what our style is, so it all makes sense, that it hopefully makes sense.
That's
We're
really
actually going to make it a prerequisite for a lot of our Hardy-Dar partners, that they do go through this process with us, so that we know how to work in a constructive way.
And I think that's the two layers that DNA offers is, and I know it was originally presented as, financial DNA, understanding client investor behavior, and working with advisors. That's one layer of the technology, and that's ultimately the end game. But also knowing how each person inside the business is going to respond, how they need to be communicated with and related to, is an important first step to financial DNA ultimately, or money EQ, being successful with the investors. But also for whatever the firm otherwise does with technologies, because this is, the DNA is not the only technology the firm's going to use. There's lots of other technologies. This is very powerful into managing the people around it. So there's two really big aspects here for you guys at Linktank and Hardy-Dar of being technology implementers, wanting to create customized experiences. It's big.
Absolutely. I mean, we do see it as, we do see it as a disruption. We're seeing Hardy-Dar as something that's unique, and we haven't come across it anywhere else in the world yet, something quite like the concept of it. And I guess when you're in a phase like this, you're always working within a void, because there's very little templates to work from. So you're just making it up as you go along, and to have whatever tools you can get at your disposal to help you try and navigate a new kind of disruptive space is invaluable. And so, we're grateful for the opportunity to be able to have those things available to us.
So I think that's a good pivot point for us, just to we'll take this conversation a little bit to you, Robyn. You completed the DNA discovery process. So when you got your reports back, how did you feel about it?
I definitely felt, at first glance, and not having had any experience with it before, I was really surprised at how accurate it seemed to me. I had some questions, but mostly around the semantics of it and what those things meant, but they really resonated. It was almost 100. When I looked at it, I was like, oh, this is 100% spot on. I just had a few questions about two areas, but other than that, I was really surprised. I've done a lot of different questionnaires like this, these kinds of assessments. So I've had an Enneagram, and I've completed an Enneagram, which was an extremely useful process, but it does take a while to unpack and get to terms with what it's telling you. What was very interesting to me about this one is how practical and simple and quickly the insights are available. So there's not a lot of unpacking that needs to happen. In fact, when you start to have conversations with Carol afterwards, they're just new insights that come out of those conversations, which are great. And really great having the conversation with her around how she positions something that you may have felt was perhaps not such a strength, and seeing it a new light, and seeing it as a strength rather than a weakness, which was a really great process to be able to go through.
So, and just for the benefit of our listeners, you came out as a facilitator style. So I think anybody listening probably would see that in the work that you've been doing. in facilitating these conversations inside technology firms. And that's an absolute match for everything you've been doing for all these years in financial services. But what to you, what did the report highlight as a key strength? What was jumping out there?
So, what didn't jump out immediately to me, and that we're going back to the weaknesses, was, especially the area about spontaneity, about spontaneous, and the various traits that fall into that section. My initial response, based on the experience I've had within financial services and how you are seen in financial services, as a creative, spontaneous individual, you don't quite feel that you fit in. So was one of the first areas I tackled when I was looking at that, at the report, was with those kinds of things. The trust area seemed perfectly, that made perfect sense. But those two areas, the trust bit and the creative bit, also made sense. But spontaneous area was really interesting to me, and something that I wouldn't have thought of quite as much of a strength as I now think it of, especially now where things are changing so much.
I think, if I help you pull that together, you've got huge strengths. One, creating trust, which is very strong in your report. And if you think about it, you've got to build trust with the customers. You're bridging the gap between a technology being implemented. You've got to build trust with the technology provider, and then with these users that are potentially very big organizations. And we're in an industry now that is wanting to build trust with its investors and customers, but hasn't always done that. And so so trust is all over this, and you've got it in spades. Not everybody does, so that's a good start. But I think the spontaneity is so important, because what a lot of people don't realize, Robyn, is that someone who's spontaneous is usually very intuitive, instinctive, and is able to capture what people's feelings are in a setting, and to be able to walk into a room and handle a conversation maybe of 50 financial advisors, and they're all got expectations of what they want out of a technology or what they believe it to be, and some of them would be wrong. To be able to ask them the right questions, unlock them, know what they're feeling. Someone that's more structured, which is of course what lots of businesses want, will miss all of that completely, because they won't feel it. They'll be still busy analyzing numbers and not getting the feelings of the person or knowing what question they need to ask in the moment. So I think that's, to allay any fear that you have, this is an extreme strength that you bring to the table, is the spontaneity. And the creativity is important as well. And you mentioned that because I think that is a key talent, is being able to see a pathway forward to implement a new technology in a business. Where are the problems and what solution do they need? So, this is where your own personal style is so powerful.
I really love the analogy that Carol also gave me when she was doing my assessment with me. And it's so true. And very often I feel like it's seen as a little bit crazy, but all of those strengths, we often end up with a problem needs to get solved. And that's the key question, right? So we've got a problem we need to solve. It's usually my kind of character trait that will go, forget the rule book, forget what we've done before. Let's just try something. If it doesn't work first time, that doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be perfect. Let's just try it. And we can fix it. We can hone it afterwards. So let's go with that. And I wouldn't have broadcasted that before, because I would have thought people would think I'm a flake for doing it. But I'm thinking now, especially now after what we've experienced with COVID, where you've got to change really fast and you've got to come up with solutions to problems in a completely different way than you ever did before, that's going to be useful. That's going to be a useful thing for people to have access to be able to go through that and at least consider it as a way forward.
Helping an organization go through change is important. You know, managing it in your own business, like you've done that with Linktank itself. You've brought Hadidar out there into the marketplace. In these difficult times, and being adaptable is something that's really big these days. And being able to see what the problem is, I think, is something that's important. But also, you can have you're capable of having the conversation around it. So it's not just seeing the problem. It's you've got to, as you said, you've got to bring that back to feelings and how people are going to feel about it and respond to it. So if I sort of distilled this down and said, bring this to, in a way, your identity, or where you see you having the greatest strategic impact as a technology integrator, what would you say that is, Robyn?
The ability, the ability to connect people, to connect technology to business requirements, just connection, and really getting people to properly, authentically connect, because it's only that way that any real positive change can happen.
So in a way,
we need change.
So in a way, it's making the technology connective itself, connecting it to the people is more your strength and where your impact's going to be than just the specific implementation of it. Because I think that you can see the problem and what problem needs to be solved, but sitting there step by step and going through all the implementation tasks is not as big a strength. Have I sort of got that right?
Absolutely right. I mean, we've got people in our business that are far stronger from a technology point of view and a project management point of view to guide the process and the actual technical implementation of anything. I have very little understanding of it. I really tend to get a helicopter view of it, just enough to be able to understand how I make the dots connect so that it works for people.
So making technology connect with people and people's feelings is really the sweet spot for you. That's where your biggest impact's going to be.
Where I get the most excited, because I do think so inside especially in our financial services industry, we have an incredible capacity to bring about positive change in human beings' lives, and making sure that technology connects with financial advice really well enables an advisor to see more clients and get advice to more clients, and therefore enable more people to have more control over their own wealth management process. And that's really, really important, especially in a country like South Africa where there's so much inequality. It's critical. We need to get it right.
And that's really where you're going to influence so much change and have such a big impact. And I think it's, in a way, it's like for a lot of leaders, you can have the best idea in the world, great analytical brain, but if you can't communicate, you haven't got a chance. And you've got to understand people's feelings, and that's something that you've got. And I'll look forward to seeing how the industry in South Africa transforms as you bring these technologies to the table. I think what you're alluding to at the end there as well is, as we wrap this up, Robyn, is financial literacy will be a huge thing in South Africa, given the inequality. It is everywhere, but South Africa obviously will benefit from it. And if we get the financial technologies right and connecting the right way, we can do so much at that level.
Absolutely. And isn't it exciting?
It is.
We can.
It is. It's and influencing human behavior. And I think it's fantastic. So Robyn, as we wrap up, have you got any quick tip for listeners to sort of take away in addition to what you've said?
I'm really interested to, I'm hoping, I'm going to share this with people so that they really, and I invite them to watch it just to maybe get a little bit more insight into me, and maybe sometimes, and hopefully it answers their questions around my motivations, which I think is a good thing to be. And then keep an open mind about this process. You know, we are so, especially, I mean, it's a new thing. So let's keep an open mind about the difference that it can make. Give it a chance, try it once, see where it takes you. With Hardydar, we've made it really accessible, and there is no long-term commitment required. So try it and see. And I'm pretty sure you're going to find a really positive outcome. So
well, I'm confident that everybody's going to have a great experience, because you're in touch with their feelings, and you're putting that at the center. And if you're going to be client-centered, any business, that's what has to happen.
Absolutely, 100%, Hugh.
So thank you, Robyn. It's been wonderful spending time with you today. And I think a lot of listeners at many levels of corporate buying, advisors, investors are going to get a lot from listening to this in not just financial services, but many industries that are dealing with technology, because it's the key to our future.
Thank you for the opportunity, Hugh. It's been a delight chatting with you.